All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Travis from TBT Racing. Kind of new to this ADV market. Haven't been out here before. It's super cool. Been in the suspension industry for 29 years. Been riding motorcycles for 41 years. My godfather, Dave Hyatt, taught me how to ride at the wee age of 4 on a Mr. 50. And if anybody ever sees a Mr. 50 anywhere that's clean, please send it my direction. I'd like to own one and hang it on my wall. My background relatively to motorcycle racing, 2008 we helped Jonah Street go to Dakar. 2008 through 13, Destry Abbott, Jacob Argybright, and Josh Moros raced the National Hare and Hound Series. We worked with Taylor Robert at the Works Series back in 2008 to 2013, and his tenure at Factory Kawasaki. We did a lot of Factory Kawi off-road stuff. Local boy Ricky Russell used to work for us at the Monroe shop and currently racing GNCC for Factory Yamaha and Pro Team back east. Freestyle motocross, Baja. I've raced the Baja 1000 3 times with different teams. We won the limited pro class back in 2015 on a KTM 350, the bike that everybody said couldn't take Mexico. Supercross, all that stuff. And started tuning by Travis back in 1990 before I even graduated high school, and now we've got 12 locations worldwide. So I kind of wanted to go over with you guys today how to adjust your motorcycle, how to think about what your motorcycle's doing so you can make the correct adjustments. A lot of what happens out on your motorcycle is you're going through bumps and the back end wants to kick up. And so immediately you go to the symptom, which is the rear end kicking up, and then go, okay, well, I'll slow the rebound down. And so what I want to challenge you to do is to think a little bit deeper than that and drill down into why did the back end kick up. The analogy I like to use is if you've got a milk allergy and you drink milk and it doesn't work out so good for you, do you stop drinking the milk or do you take a pill? And taking a pill is slowing the rebound down on the shock. Stopping drinking the milk is assessing why is the shock kicking up. And what happens is the spring, as it's collapsed, builds spring energy. So if I push this spring down just a little tiny bit, it only builds a little tiny bit of energy. Well, if I push this thing all the way down, which I can't, not that strong, but imagine I did, and then let go of it, the energy unloads. So that's what's happening to the back of your bike when you hit a big bump, right? It compresses, and then it does this. Well, rightly, if you double check your sag on your bike, you have the right spring, all that's correct, then you say, okay, well, I think we may have a rebound issue. But even then, I would still go after the compression adjustment that's applicable to the type of bump that you hit that sent the rear end up. So high-speed compression or high-velocity compression, which is on the bikes that have that adjustment, would be the big nut on the outer, or some of them have 2 separate screws depending on, there's so many different shocks on the market. The owner's manual is a good reference for which one's high speed and which one's low speed. I'll get into that circuitry here in a minute. But really think about what your bike is doing that's causing it to have the ill effect, and then make that adjustment. So I would stiffen up the high speed compression and see if that gets the back to not drive deep into the stroke, or I'd stiffen up the preload on the spring if you check the numbers and there's too much sag or too much static sag. You get into a conundrum of static sag versus rider sag, and a little bit later we'll do a sag module on the bike and show you how to measure those two things and why it's important. But static sag, if you think about the bike and it's just static trim, just sitting there by itself, the bike will stay balanced. And if your spring's too heavy and you soften the spring up, which we find this happens a lot with the ladies, guy helps them get a bike, they get a bike, they come out, ask for some help, and they're light. And the bike's set up for a heavier rider or a short gentleman or however. I mean, everybody's different heights, weights. So they soften the spring up to get the rider sag correct. Well, then all of a sudden the static of the bike is like this. And they're like, well, gosh, it doesn't turn, and I'm crashing all the time. And then, people, well, what's wrong? I don't know. And it gets very frustrating. And so keeping the static balance of the bike is very much more important than the rider sag, because you can actually steer the motorcycle when it's balanced. But if you have to get a tremendous amount of static sag to get the rider sag correct, then you need a softer spring. And that's all stuff that you can just send us an email, call us on the phone. We've got, like I said, we've got 12 shops worldwide. I'm sure you can get a hold of somebody that can help you out through email or telephone. Does anybody have any questions regarding sag and static versus rider sag?
What exactly is sag?
What's that?
What exactly is the sag?
So the sag, static is so you put the bike on the stand, like I have it here, where the rear wheel's at full droop. A lot of the bigger bikes have a center stand, so you can put it on the center stand and maybe put a little weight on the front if you need to, so you're at full droop. Take a measurement between two fixed points, the center of the wheel and a rear fender or something that's not going to move. And then you put the bike on the ground, push it down, let it come up, just gently. You don't want to, because sometimes the bike will sit a little high, and then so you kind of do it a couple times and get a good average. But you'll get a number of, with no rider on the bike, just the bike under its own weight, which would be static sag. Then you put the rider on the bike, and I'd like to check it standing and sitting, because if you've got little legs, you're kind of in the middle of the bike. If you're a taller person, like you're 6'6" and mostly legs, a lot of times they sit on the rear fender unknowingly, and then the sag ends up way out in the left field because they're setting on the bike at the rear fender. And so then I have them slide to the center of the bike, and it changes 10 millimeters, which is 2 turns on the spring on most bikes. And you're like, well, that's not going to work. So that's where, like, a lot of our settings go out the door with a static sag recommendation and the correct spring rate for the rider. And I don't even recommend you check the rider sag, because oftentimes you end up off in left field somewhere chasing your tail because you've tried to get the rider sag correct, and then all the bike's like this or the bike's like this, and it's ill handling because you're trying to chase a sag number based on poor rider seating position or something like that.